Hello, I'm Charles LeBuff here again with episode 13 of my Sanibel Chronicles. I'd like to welcome all of the new subscribers in the past 2 weeks aboard. I hope you're enjoying these productions, and as I get more into the system, they'll get a little better over time. And I hope to have recommended subject matter from viewers like you. Watching this on YouTube, please don't forget to like the YouTube episode to help the channel grow. Tonight's episode is a continuation and the third section of a three-part series where someone asked me to discuss the Sanibel River, Sanibel Slough, and the drainage system of Sanibel. So I'll try to get through this within 30 minutes. There's quite a bit of information to share, and it goes back quite a long time. The Sanibel River, the Sanibel Slough, is famous for its ability to produce gajillions of salt marsh mosquitoes. The salt marsh mosquito is our nuisance mosquito. And unlike many mosquitoes, they deposit their eggs on dry, moist soil, such as was present historically in the Sanibel Slough. This photograph is the Sanibel Slough completely dry in about 1951. And at that point, the salt marsh mosquito would deposit its eggs, and those eggs would have to wait for the summer rains to start. And once the rainy season started usually in June, the slough would flood, the eggs would hatch, and mosquitoes would be produced by the billions. And it indeed made Sanibel the salt marsh mosquito capital of the world. In 1950, a New Jersey light trap that's pictured here was established. The station was established near the Sanibel post office down by the ferry landing on the east end of Sanibel. And the New Jersey light trap has a light bulb at the very top underneath that conical roof. And beneath that light bulb is a fan that is blowing downward. And as night flying insects would be attracted to that light, the fan would propel them down through that circular metal section. And at the bottom of that was a killing jar that had a chemical that was fatal to the insects, and they would be gathered in that container. In one night period, from dusk until dark, the light trap near the ferry landing trapped 365,000 salt marsh mosquitoes. And that was a world-class record for many, many years. So what did they do about that mosquito problem? Well, a few people who lived on Sanibel at the time got together and they formed a small mosquito control district. And with chemicals, primarily in those days, DDT, they had a truck and they would go around Sanibel Captiva spraying this dangerous insecticide. And all of the young children, of course, that could get out while this was going on would be running through the DDT. And this is one of those early mosquito trucks similar to what was used on the islands. Now, DDT, as you know, is very dangerous to wildlife species. Bald eagles, for example, throughout the country were reacting to the pesticide by depositing eggs that were completely without a shell. And locally, our brown pelicans on rookeries in Pine Island Sound and Matlacha Pass were laying eggs that once the female began to incubate them, they'd break. The eggshells were so thin because of DDT residue in the bird system. Well, the Mosquito Control District, the Lee County Mosquito Control District, was formed in 1958. And prior to that, the Florida State Board of Health committed to a large-scale mosquito study on Sanibel. And under the supervision and development of Dr. Maurice Provost, a plan was developed to maintain the water levels of the Sanibel Slough at a sufficiently high enough level that the mosquitoes could not deposit eggs because there would be no bare soil. This sounded good in theory, but it never worked very well. But I believe that the water level they wanted to maintain in the slough was 30 inches above mean sea level. And of course, what that meant in the summertime, the Sanibel Slough would flood, and it would flood neighborhoods and people's yards, and it became a problem. But it's something that the people who lived long-term on Sanibel coped with rather easily. The Mosquito Control District came over with large drag lines, and they began to channelize the Sanibel Slough. This photograph is one of their drag lines, and the man standing up beside it is Colin Moore. Colin Moore joined the Mosquito Control District after they had started ditching to the west of Rabbit Road, and he did all of the ditching between Rabbit Road and Bowman's Beach Road for all intents and purposes. And after he was done ditching the slough, his machine was moved over into the mangrove system, the leased lands leased by the National Wildlife Refuge from the state of Florida, and they began a massive mosquito control program there, namely in the formation of a large dike that has since become the Wildlife Drive. This next photograph is an aerial from about 1958 about 1960 of the Sanibel Slough. The cleared area in the bottom, on the bottom, is for those who may not be familiar with the island look in these days. That's West Rocks. The road to the right that's going north and south is Rabbit Road, and the white line down through the center between the beach and Sanibel Captiva Road is the channelized main Sanibel Slough. And then there are small tributary ditches that were dug off of that main section. And before this project was done, Sanibel Slough was nothing but a crisscross of white lines where these channels were connected to connect to the main Sanibel Slough. So the principle was mosquitoes would go ahead and lay their eggs, as they have done for eons. And then when the rainfall came in June, the water in the Sanibel River, it was called during the rainy season, would rise up, the mosquito eggs would hatch, but with that rising water was also transmitted or their range extended small minnows called primarily gambusia and killifish that with the rising water were there to consume the mosquito larvae. So it was a great attempt at biological mosquito control. And it worked. It worked reasonably well, and it's still working. If it hadn't been for the Lee County Mosquito Control District, most of the people living on the islands today couldn't live there. It would be impossible. I lived there during those bad times, near the end of the bad times, and I'll be telling stories, I'm sure, about how the mosquitoes were, how they affected residents. Well, part of the arsenal for mosquito control was aerial adulticiding and larviciding. This photograph is a C-47, also known as a DC-3, flying low at low elevation and fogging the habitat with could have originally been DDT, but it was, like I said, it was phased out early on, and they went to Baytax and malathion. And the next picture is 3 of the C-47s making a turn at or near Blind Pass and depositing their fog. This was actually taken by herbicide companies in a photographer in a helicopter as they made the bend on the western end of Sanibel to come around and head in another swath toward the lighthouse, where they'd turn again and keep going back and forth until they had drifted the herbicide, the fog, over the entire island. The adulticide is still going on, but the mosquito control is now using mostly, I believe, helicopters. When I was employed at Ding Darling, I was the person on staff that managed the chemical control proposals, and I wrote all of the specs that mosquito control had to follow when they applied herbicides to the, not herbicides, adulticides and the larvicides over refuge lands. And it was a cooperative thing. It worked very well. The Fish and Wildlife Service and the Lee County Mosquito Control had excellent relations. The gentleman that started this series off was asking me about the water control structures on the island. This photograph shows the 2 major control structures. A is one that is between Sanibel Captiva Road and Tarpon Bay. It's a dam-like structure. And B is a small weir or water control structure at Beach Road. As I said earlier, the water level of the Sanibel Slough River was going to try to be kept at 30 degrees above mean sea level, but that continued flooding of property. After Sanibel incorporated in 1974, and the islands were basically saved from overdevelopment, the elevation maintained by the Lee County Mosquito Control was changed after the city initiated a study, a contract with engineers to try to come up with a manageable water level that would not flood people's yards. So the water level in the Sanibel Slough system was dropped several inches. And ecologically, that was a major blunder because the interior of the Sanibel Slough has been undeniably changed in the last nearly 50 years, because the lower water level, where it wasn't managed to be high enough in elevation, managed native plants that were desirable in their original situation on the margin of the wetlands. It allowed them to encroach into the Sanibel Slough, and the slough is, or it was before Hurricane Ian, was being taken over by simple buttonwood. The Brazilian pepper that had attacked the slough system was finally managed, but the native plant has done considerable ecological damage to the freshwater, open savanna-type slough that once originated there. This next slide is the original water control structure placed by mosquito control. The dam, or weir, is in the dead center of the photograph. They finished this in 1959, and I went to the dedication. The mosquito, it's funny, but the mosquito control thought they owned the land where that dam was located, but in the end, they found out that we, the Fish and Wildlife Service, actually owned the property, and the good elements of cooperation between the two agencies worked out, and the dam water control structure is still there, but it's been upgraded. The next photograph is an aerial showing the new dam built by the city of Sanibel. It's just to the north of Sanibel Captiva Road, and its sill is set at a lower elevation than optimum for mosquito control and to maintain the integrity of the ecosystem of the slough, but it is functioning and doing a job, but not one that best suits the environment of the Sanibel interior. The next slide is an aerial taken above Tarpon Bay Road, looking down at the Sanibel River. You can see on the right side of the road, you can see that bike path bridge, and on the other side of the road there is a small water control structure. It seems that the city is managing the Sanibel slough in two compartments, because quite often the western part of the slough gets more rainfall than the eastern part, or vice versa. So they try to maintain an equilibrium that's to their desired elevation. And the next shot is a small weir at Beach Road. It's in dead center of the photograph. Now, when the original mosquito control water control structure that you saw in an earlier slide, there was no water control structure at Beach Road. Beach Road simply was a dam that held the Sanibel slough in place, the drainage, after the mosquito control had begun to dig out the Sanibel River, beginning at Beach Road. Then after that, some culverts were put in place, and then after the city took over management of water levels, these modern, expensive water control structures, or weirs, were put in place. So if you live on Sanibel Captiva now, or you visit Sanibel Captiva, you may think that the mosquitoes and the sandflies are terrible. But believe me, you couldn't live there 60 years ago unless you were sort of tough like I was. At this point, I want to remind you that in June I'll start a 4-part series on sea turtles, since sea turtle nesting season is upon us. And it started off with a bang on Sanibel. The first nest of the 2024 season was a giant leatherback turtle. And we'll be talking about leatherback turtles as we progress in our series on sea turtles. So again, please share the fact that this podcast exists with your friends and relatives who may be interested in Southwest Florida, its background, and how things have come to be in the past 70 years or so. And I'll be happy to respond to questions and comments, and that makes it much more interesting and fun for me. So thank you much for your very much for your attention, and please don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and by all means like this episode to help my YouTube channel grow. And I thank you very much for that. I'll catch you next time. Thank you.